Free your staff to focus on high-impact work while offering round-the-clock assistance to every student. With Element 451, you can deploy AI agents that reason, act, and provide support at scale, solving problems, analyzing data, and crafting personalized outreach instantly. These AI agents expand your team's abilities without replacing the human touch, allowing staff to dedicate their time to what matters most. Unlock the future of workforce enablement at element451.com. Welcome to Breaking Silos, a podcast that shines a light on the incredible partnerships happening across campuses every day. I'm your host, Shane Baglini from Muhlenberg College. Join me every 2 weeks for discussions with some of the best minds in higher ed marketing, enrollment management, student affairs, campus leadership, and more. Breaking Silos is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome to Breaking Silos, where I'm joined by the Tribe, a group from William & Mary today. I'm joined by Tiffany Beker, Emily Phillips, and Caroline Ward from various sort of areas of marketing and communications and admissions at William & Mary. And we're talking about student influencers and ambassadors at William & Mary, which I'm personally excited about, and I think a lot of others will be, because I think it's something that a lot of people are trying to get off the ground at their own institution. And so, Tiffany, we'll start with you and just talk about how this initiative came about, why it was important, and ultimately why it was beneficial for all three of your respective departments to partner together.
Sure. And thank you for having us all on the podcast. This was definitely something that there were a lot of silos to start, and we've managed to, I think, consolidate them at least a little bit. Back in 2022, all three of our offices had sort of little pockets of students who worked with us to create social media content, some in just a part-time capacity, and some of them it was a more full-time capacity. But as social media tends to do, we were recognizing this growing need for more video content on our social channels, and more specifically, content that was authentic, sort of student-to-student, peer-to-peer kind of conversations to really try and strengthen the relationship between our accounts and the current and prospective students that we were trying to talk to. And we were realizing that we were often looking for similar content. Emily manages the flagship channels. Caroline manages the undergraduate admissions channels. My team manages the alumni social media channels and the LinkedIn flagship account. And we were all looking for sometimes very similar content, something that would appeal to a current student audience. For the flagship accounts would also likely appeal to prospective students as maybe something we want to put on the admissions website or vice versa. So when budget time rolled around, both Emily and I knew that we wanted to request more students for each one of our cohorts to assist in all of that content, and hoping that at least one of us might get those additional resources. And when this ended up getting brought back up to leadership, they recognized that, yeah, this is probably something that we would want to combine together. We don't want to be duplicating efforts. And if we can share these resources, we can kind of increase capacity across the board. We did a lot of research online to see how other groups and universities had organized their setup, whether it was a street team, things like that. I know I looked at University of West Florida. I looked at Belmont's street team and Missouri Southern to try and figure out what's a good number, manageable number of students for the amount of work that we knew we wanted them to produce, while also keeping in mind they're part-time workers, so they're not going to work more than 10 or so hours a week. And we ended up settling on a cohort of 10, and that sort of allowed for a little bit of attrition if something did happen over the course of the semester, but gave us enough of a bench that we could really pull forward for whatever project we needed to do. So Emily, Caroline, and I were sort of designated as the liaisons and leads for the effort for our respective teams. And then we also have sort of a second person from each one of our teams that also serves as a mentor. Emily also has the huge responsibility of being the official supervisor for all of the students and all the lovely HR responsibilities that come along with that. But now that we've sort of had that budget approved and everything, the three of us will meet weekly, and we wanted to make sure it was really important to have a designated time set aside where we just talked about this and it wasn't just sort of ad hoc as we could fit it in. That allows us to really coordinate a lot of the communications and a lot of the distribution of things, especially. So when Caroline tells us, hey, regular decisions are coming out Friday at 5 p.m., we can all coordinate that amazing video that our students had created to share all at the same time. So that's sort of a not so brief look over of how it started. We're in our second year of doing it, and the students will be coming back next week.
Great. So yeah, I mean, so it sounds like to me it's with leadership kind of buy-in and resources dedicated, it is sort of a robust initiative. And I'm wondering, Caroline, from your perspective, how are students selected? What is the recruitment process like? Is it a volunteer kind of basis where people sign up? How does one become a Renfluencer, as you all have coined the term?
That's a great question. So we do have an application process for this program. We do want students with some knowledge in that digital space and some excitement to share that William & Mary community. So we do have an application process where students can submit a work sample. And this doesn't have to be from a previous, paid job position. It can be a sample from their typical social media channels, their own personal, but something where they've created content so we can see kind of benchmark of where they are coming into it. And then we also ask them why they're interested in this position, because we want to know that they have a clear understanding of what the position will entail for them, and also what the hours look like and what teams are involved. It involves admissions. It involves the flagship channels. It involves communications and marketing teams on campus. So we certainly want students coming in with that knowledge there. My office also has an application process for our tour guides, which is a huge program on campus. But tying to that, both the tour guide program and the Renfluencer program highlight the authentic student experience. So already coming in with that knowledge of this is what we're looking for. And like Tiffany said, all of our teams were working on content that kind of shared that same and wanted that same student experience shown on our channels. We knew that coming together and having students create that content for all of us would bring our teams together instead of doing 3 different projects that kind of had that similar vibe. But also it's just involving our students and saying, hey, we want you to share your perspective. We are not going to write a script for you. We're not going to say exactly what you have to talk about. We might, like was mentioned, come and say, okay, we would like an excited video for the regular decision applicants who are going to be getting good news, but please feel free to come with ideas to share what would you have liked to see. Or we ask students, what questions did you have when you were applying to colleges and universities, and what would you have liked to know? That's been really helpful with this Renfluencer program too, is whether it's admission related or marketing related or alumni related, we ask these students who they would have liked to hear from and what questions they would have liked answered, because they are university students themselves. They graduated from high school a little more recent than we did, so they might be a little more knowledgeable in that area. We also want them to hit the ground running when they start off in the program, and that's another reason we like to see a work sample, is because we're not going to be training them the entire year on what social media means, how to go about filming. We, of course, provide some guest speakers to show some different tools and new skills that they can learn. And we think that's a great avenue for them to enhance their already great skills. But we do want them to have some knowledge coming into this so they can hit the ground running and start creating content for us. And then we, in terms of those guest speakers that come maybe on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, just showing those trends going on too, and maybe some new tools that students have access through our SWEM library here at William & Mary can also be a great learning resource for these students that they might not have otherwise realized if they weren't a Renfluencer. And then in terms of retaining them, we are always really excited to share some swag with them. So we have stickers created, we have t-shirts. We always think of new ideas to get them excited and show off that they're a Renfluencer on campus. And we actually did see an increase in applications this past year in our second year of students applying and wanting to get involved. Nice. So that's been really, really great to see.
That's great. It's great that students want to be involved, and I love that you're using it as sort of a kind of a indirect market research tool to get feedback from your students about what they would have liked to hear. And so I'm wondering, Emily, I'll start with you on this one. based on that, what content gets greenlit, and sort of how do you decide what content influencers are creating, and how much are the students involved in that decision-making process?
We try to treat them like normal employees, so we all enjoy a mix. There are things that we all have to do, and then we all have projects that are a little bit maybe more passion projects that help recharge our batteries. And so we try to apply the same model to our students. We have a mix of projects that staff identify as a need. Oh, we need something for this section of the enrollment website, or we really need to talk about this event on campus on social media. So in that instance, a member of staff of one of our teams, we have a project brief form that we ask people to fill out. And once that brief form is submitted, we will talk through and as a team, as the three of us, figure out kind of which projects rise to the priority level, which projects do we see the most crossover and the most potential for maximizing distribution. And then we also invite our students to pitch projects that they're interested in. And at our weekly meeting, they have the opportunity to give us their ideas, their thoughts on what they would like to see. Then we will ask them to fill out the project brief, which is a good exercise for them to start thinking strategically about what are they creating. They're not just creating a social media video. It needs to be entertaining. It needs to achieve some kind of strategic objective. And from there, we kind of try to balance the workload. Depends on who has what going on at any given time. So we do try to rotate. If this student had maybe a tougher project or one that was not as open to creative expression, then we'll try and give them on their next project a passion project of theirs that they pitch. So at any given time, we've got a nice mix of staff-generated ideas, which still have a lot of creative freedom. We try to leave it as open as possible for the students to add their voice, their touch, their perspective to the projects that we submit. Otherwise, we would be producing them on the institutional side if we really wanted, a very firm vision of what that needed to look like. But then we also will have a bunch of students that are working on their passion projects that are just for fun or taking a different angle on our student life. So that's been really great for us, and it seems to work well so far.
It strikes me as something that would be of value to students in terms of their portfolio and having this sort of bench of work to showcase when they're going out into the real world from a career standpoint. And so, obviously they're wanting to do quality work. And so, Tiffany, from a quality control standpoint, this is one of the things that I mentioned wanting to get this off the ground at my institution. This is one of the things that we're thinking about. How do we make sure that content that the students are creating is sort of up to our standards, but not getting in the way of that sort of authentic look and feel that you mentioned from student created content? What is the process like for you all?
It's definitely been one that's evolved over even just the 2 years that we started. We try and utilize a lot of the office tools that were provided as staff. And one, sort of as Emily mentioned, sort of get them familiar with some of the administrative processes of a proper professional work environment. So William and Mary is a Microsoft shop, so we utilize Microsoft Teams, and we have a Renfluencer team that all the students and all of the staff are a part of. We have a couple of general channels for sharing meeting updates and kind of the standard administrivia stuff, but also have an inspiration and trends channel where students can say, like, I saw this really cool video. Is there anything that we can do with this? And we also share links to general resources like our editorial style guide, our brand guidelines, things like that. So those are always on hand for students if we do cite that as something we want them to take a look at when we're giving them feedback. The first year we were doing a lot of ad hoc chats, and one of the students would just share with whomever maybe the project sponsor was, or sometimes it would just be Emily because that's who they had conversed with the most. And we were realizing sometimes we were missing the right people to be doing the reviews and things like that. So last fall we readjusted and have a dedicated Teams channel for each one of the projects, and the students are assigned to that, and then all of the staff mentors and liaisons are part of that. So the project brief that was mentioned goes in there along with any other extra materials that we have. So everything is centralized in that one spot, in that one Teams channel, and the students can they take a different approach. Each student, whether some of them are film studies majors and things like that, so they'll do short storyboards of what the idea is before they start going into production. Others will just kind of extrapolate when we're having our weekly meeting as to what their ideas are, and we'll go back and forth to make sure that everyone's sort of going in the right direction with where the original project started, and then we want to make sure that what they have envisioned matches what we were thinking in our heads for something. And as Caroline mentioned, we encourage them to check out our media center, to use proper cameras if they want to use that. Sometimes a phone actually makes more sense to use. We have a little set of tiny microphones so that they can do those interviews. And we have those tech talks as well that will sort of pull in different parts of the production process. And so all of that kind of builds into sort of a library that they can tap into of what good quality content looks like. They have our video team talking about how to mix sound or how to take a good photograph, and that all builds into what ends up being their first rough draft. They'll share that draft, and then whomever the project sponsor is will coordinate with all of the staff, mentors, to get and collect feedback, and then provide that in the most constructive way possible. Like with all feedback, it needs to be clear, it needs to be constructive, and not just saying you need to change A to B, but why are you changing A to B? Is it because this, that font doesn't work because it's not legible, so it won't be accessible, or you need to use this color, or the cuts are too quick, and really just trying to explain how to sort of bring that level from an amateur level of video to just a slightly more, but still authentic version of that content. So then they'll take in that feedback. There might be one or hopefully only one additional iteration of feedback. And we also, for all of the video clips, we have kind of a standard cool little animation of our Renfluencer logo that is a little outro for all of those videos. So any viewer of the video will sort of recognize that this is student-generated content rather than something that's coming from our proper official video team.
Want to create an AI workforce for your institution? Learn how to design AI agents for advising, data analysis, and student engagement at the AI Engage Summit. This free virtual event in February will equip you to manage complex, multi-step workflows across departments. Register now at enrollify.org/engage.
I love that you're having them hone in on those skills and tendencies that will get them noticed, I think, in the future. I do have a follow-up question that I think is going to be interesting to our listeners. But before I do, I just want to remind everybody listening to rate, subscribe, review this episode and this show, all the good things that help a podcast that you enjoy. I want to go to talk to you, Emily, to talk about sort of the challenges and hurdles that you faced, both in getting this off the ground, and it was mentioned earlier that you're supervising the students. I'd like to go down that path as well. So let's start with the challenges of getting this kind of initiative off the ground and then maintaining it.
Yeah, it's nice looking back in hindsight at how it's gone, but certainly at the outset of being given, a pile of students, and you need to figure out how to 3 teams work together to create content that's 2/3 directly supporting enrollment, 1/3 supporting other initiatives across campus. The first challenge was really just kind of figuring out how that would work, figuring out the architecture and the framework. How could our 3 teams collaborate in a way where everyone felt like they had equal stake, but we were still providing a clear sense of direction for the students. We didn't want the students to not know, like, oh, I've got 3 bosses, and boss number 1 said this and boss number 2 said that. So we wanted to make sure that it felt collaborative, and we had kind of checks and balances in place where we were making sure that we were all aligned, Tiffany, Caroline, and I, and that we were having the needs of our teams met while also being able to provide that structure and clear direction for the students. So we thankfully this happened over the summer, which at the time was a little bit slower, and we were able to take some time to really think through carefully how we wanted to organize it and build some of these structures that we've talked about. And then I think probably the most headache inducing for me anyway was hiring, in terms of hiring students was great, but there are a lot of, as we all know, processes and forms and things to hiring. And in our case, our university had switched from a PDF form that you fill out to hire students to an online system that has, I think, like 25 different inputs. And if you don't match the effective jobs date with the personnel start date, then it breaks the system. And so for me to try and do, it's called an EPAF, and it's the worst. To do 10 of those right out of the gate was really hard, and that took some time. And then making sure everybody has their social security numbers and they're cleared to work. And so just the kind of bureaucracies that come with hiring anybody, but then guiding students through that was a big challenge for us in terms of hiring. And so much so that we keep trying to hire a little bit earlier. I think we're going to start trying to hire next year's cohort this spring, just so that we can still get through those forms faster and faster each year. And then it's just a lot of it is just the usual challenge of managing students. Students are great. I think we all find it rewarding working with them. We love hearing their perspectives on things. But there's no denying that mentoring people at the beginning of their career takes a little bit more time and energy and thought, and helping them find the expectations of what a working world looks like. Sometimes they disappear. Sometimes we have to help them through some personal challenges. Sometimes we have to find the nice way to say, now explain to me why you thought that was the move. The things I think we all enjoy, including our other teammates who help mentor this group of students. And it really is a group mentorship project. We really enjoy working with them. And so it's fulfilling, but it is time consuming. Our ongoing challenge is trying to figure out how to move quickly. Social media moves so quickly and it can absorb so much content. How do we quickly, consistently produce high quality content when we only see our students once a week? And we, in our staff lives, exist in somewhat of a review heavy world where there are a lot of brains and a lot of voices reviewing the institutional content that we develop. But we want to try and keep our students as able to run as quickly and be as agile as possible. So I think that's something that we're still kind of tweaking. As Tiffany mentioned, we've got the Teams channel and we're trying to do that differently so that I'm not a bottleneck of reviewing content. And I think that's kind of going to be our ongoing challenge. And each year, each semester, it seems like we get a little bit closer and a little bit faster and able to do that. So that's really exciting.
So Emily, as we wrap up our conversation here, I'm curious to know two things. How has the initiative been received so far by students, mainly students, but also faculty and staff and the community? And what are next steps for the initiative, including any lessons you've learned from partnering so closely on this project with your colleagues here?
We've had some really nice anecdotal feedback from some students who have in the comments or to Caroline have said that they really enjoy the content. I think, as Caroline mentioned, our applicant pool was bigger this year. I think that speaks to people seeing and recognizing and enjoying the work that we do. And definitely we've received a lot of positive feedback from faculty and staff. Specifically, we have a lot of campus partners outside of our three teams that have really enjoyed seeing student content on their subject areas. For example, we worked with the university architect to do a construction update, and I know that they were very pleased to be able to have a student lens and have somebody covering the work that they're doing. And so I think that's been really great to see how much we've been able to impact hopefully the whole community and help other campus partners as well. And I think we see also a positive reinforcement in the results of the content. So we know that the Renfluencer content averaged 3 times more reach on undergraduate admissions Instagram than some of the other content. We have reached cumulatively 300,000 accounts with all of our Renfluencer content combined.
Explain the name Renfluencers to those who might not be familiar with the institution.
Sure. So William & Mary is the second oldest university in the country, and we have the oldest academic building in continuous use in the U.S., and that's the Wren building. So when we were trying to come up with a name, we wanted something that was tied to William & Mary. There were various things with the Griffin, who's our mascot, and we bounced everything back and forth. I'm pretty sure that AI was used to help generate ideas for names at some point. But I'm not sure I can attribute who exactly came up with the name Renfluencers, but we came up with a list and then brought that list to the first cohort of students, and asked them to pick the one that they liked the most. Because we realized we might think a name is totally awesome, but I'm also 20 years older than they are. So they're not, what I think is cool might not be what everybody else thinks is cool. And so we landed on Renfluencers, and then some of the web and design team made an amazing logo out of that, as Caroline mentioned, we now have stickers and t-shirts and sort of press pass looking things to try and get that brand out there a little bit more.
It's really nice that this is a group where we just feel, I think, so energized by what we're learning and seeing from the students. And there is, I think, amongst the three of us, a shared desire and a shared energy to keep making this program better and better. And keep seeing how far we can take it, and how much we can do, and where we can go with that. So we're excited for next year. As I mentioned, we're looking to start hiring even earlier and see how we can tweak that process. We want to look at how, as Tiffany mentioned, we have these things that we call tech talks, which is one of the little ways that we teach and build some of those career readiness skills within our students. How can we refine that platform of education for them? How can we tweak the equipment? How can we tweak how we're teaching them, or how we're approaching the editing process? So we're just kind of not perfectionists necessarily, although we always at William and Mary we strive for continuous excellence. But I think the three of us are we're excited and ready to keep tweaking it and keep innovating, and just see how far we can go and see what the next project's going to be.
I really appreciate how thoughtfully you've gone about it in developing this framework for students to really, honestly, give them something that's of great value as they go forward, and really creating this kind of portfolio of content for them and for the institution. I think it's really great. And I would recommend anybody interested in learning more questions, Caroline and Tiffany and Emily's LinkedIn profiles will be in the show notes below. So encourage you to reach out, because it's a great initiative with again, a really cool name and some great content. So thank you, Tiffany, Emily, and Caroline, for joining me.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Breaking Silos is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry best as your host. Learn from Dave Builds, Jenny Lee Fowler, Eddie Francis, and many more of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.